Ready to prioritize yourself? Your skin is a great place to start. Dime Beauty, founded by a master esthetician, is more than just a skincare company. With 4 skin-conscious categories, skincare, beauty, body care, and fragrance, Dime offers simple, spa-worthy products that will help bring your glow back. Whether you're revitalizing your regimen with nourishing products or building one from scratch, Dime makes it easy. The Work System, our all-in-one best-selling routine, includes a cleanser of your choice, toner, serums, and moisturizers, taking the guesswork out of skincare for your healthiest, happiest skin yet. Dime's commitment to clean ingredients and sustainable packaging ensures every product is as gentle on your skin as it is on the planet. With thousands of glowing 5-star reviews and a loyal community, the results speak for themselves. Revive your skin and give yourself the routine refresh you deserve by visiting dimebeautyco.com. That's dimebeautyco.com. Your best skin awaits.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Get this, adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/Wondery. greenlight.com/Wondery.
I can tell you that the reason that they let her leave the hospital is they felt that she was competent enough to leave. I said to him, you know what? That's, excuse me, a bunch of BS. Because you tell me, Jason, what competent person leaves at 1:30 in the morning in -3 degrees with no money, no cell phone, no coat, no way home, who's a nervous wreck, who hasn't eaten for 3 days, suffering from hallucinations. And my daughter was a scaredy cat, a scaredy cat. She would always say to me, Mom, it's 10 o'clock at night. The front door's not locked. And I'm like, yeah, I know. She's like, Mom, you should lock the door. Always make sure the doors are all locked at night. You know, Mom, do this. Mom, she never trusted a soul. My thinking is now that night that she left, and I don't know what led to it. But I said to the hospital person who gave me this review, if you think that that's competent, I'd like to hear your version of competency, because to me, that sounds completely like somebody incompetent.
That's Debbie Harbowy, the mother of Rebecca Harbowy, who went missing in Maple Ridge, British Columbia in 2023. This is the Silver Linings Handbook podcast. I'm Jason Blair. Debbie Harbowy has described her daughter, Rebecca, as someone who cares deeply about her family, pets, and someone who always tried to stay in touch with her relatives. For the past 17 months, Debbie and her family, who live in a suburb of Vancouver, British Columbia, have been searching for her. The Vancouver region is nestled between the Pacific Ocean and the majestic North Shore Mountains of British Columbia, a place that consistently garners global attention for being one of the world's most livable places. A ferry ride to the west of downtown is Vancouver Island, the largest island by area and most populous along the western coast of the Americas. But like most places, it's complex. The Vancouver region is a place of contrasts, with incredible natural beauty and a laid-back atmosphere, while simultaneously struggling with urban challenges and a high cost of living. Its suburbs sit on the U.S. border, and about 2 hours south from downtown is the heart of Seattle, where people gravitate for the same reasons and face some of the same challenges, like drug addiction and homelessness. In January 2023, British Columbia began an experiment with decriminalization of smaller quantities of drugs like powdered cocaine, crack, MDMA, and heroin and other opioids. Studies have shown that those efforts have led to a significant reduction in criminal justice system involvement for those who use drugs, but that it did not slow the rise in hospitalizations and deaths. British Columbia has continued its efforts, but in May 2024, it recriminalized possession of drugs in public spaces. Rebecca had gone to receive medicine for back pain and eventually found herself addicted to fentanyl. In the early morning hours of November 23, 2023, Rebecca did what thousands of people do every day and walked out of a hospital. For her, the Ridge Meadows Hospital in Maple Ridge is a town on the northeastern section of Greater Vancouver's metropolitan area. Maple Ridge lies along the Fraser River and the mountain peaks known as the Golden Ears. It's a place that has struggled with problems of crime and drug use and was a part of the British Columbia experiment. The temperature was cold that day. What made Rebecca's situation different than most people who enter the hospital is that she both left, at least according to the hospital, but not without some contradictory information. She left against medical advice and was in a mental health crisis, and she has not been seen since. Rebecca was last captured on video surveillance walking eastbound in the middle of River Road near a warehouse a little more than a mile or 2 kilometers away. The last section of the road before it turned mostly residential on one side and the river, railroad tracks, and thick brush were on the other. It was before you reached the Port Haney commuter rail station on the West Coast Express line that connects metropolitan Vancouver to the Fraser Valley. She was in a Nike hoodie with a black logo lettering on the chest, black Puma sweatpants, and Nike running shoes. Then she just disappears from the camera's view. According to Rebecca's family, she was struggling with drug addiction and had been trying to detox at her parents' home where she lived. But after becoming confused, disoriented, and saying things that her family made no sense, she asked for them to call an ambulance. Paramedics checked on her and took her to Ridge Meadow Hospital. There, Rebecca's sister, Rachel Bertoli, said that the family was told she would be admitted for a minimum of 3 days. But after, according to news reports, Rebecca threw apple juice at a nurse, security was called, and Rebecca was taken out of the hospital and off the property without a coat, phone, wallet, or money. If true, it's peculiar. As someone who's spent more than my fair share of time working with clients in psychiatric settings, clients who are struggling with substance abuse and other mental health conditions, someone throwing apple juice on us would probably result in us thanking them for not doing worse. It would just be another day in the neighborhood. Rebecca's sister, Rachel, put it this way in a conversation with CTV News. She didn't go into the hospital a homeless person. She continued, she came in from an ambulance with someone who loves her. Why would they think it's okay to leave someone on the side of the road without anything, without anyone? At 1:30 in the morning, a woman, a 36-year-old woman, they didn't even care to call her a cab. To me, it's baffling, and sadly, it is not as common as one might think for hospitals to quote-unquote street people in a mental health crisis. In Canada and the United States, most people can leave a hospital against medical advice, but in both countries, patients must have the capacity to consent and an understanding of the potential consequences, and their mental health laws putting up a barrier against those who could pose risks to themselves and others. Too often, those systems fail. Debbie and her husband, James, along with other family members, are still searching for Rebecca, and the family and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police have made pleas for the public to assist in finding her. Today, we're going to talk about Rebecca's life and her illness, the fateful night that she went to the hospital for help, and the morning she disappeared. And we're going to discuss the difficulties the family has had in getting answers from the hospital. And we're going to discuss the question of where Rebecca has gone and the broader problems of how the healthcare industry and others handle people who are in this type of deep need. Hey, Debbie, I just wanted to thank you for joining me and just tell you a little bit about how I came across Rebecca's story. I interview a number of people who have loved ones who are missing, and I feel like sometimes when we talk about missing persons in the broader conversations, there's this stereotype of the type, and it becomes the stereotype of the way people disappear and how they disappear. And I was really just looking, trying to just sort of look broadly. And one of the things about Rebecca's story that really caught my attention was that she had disappeared from a hospital, and that she had disappeared from a hospital while she was having, what appears to essentially be a very obvious mental health crisis. And I just thought to myself as I was reading about her that a hospital or any healthcare facility should be the one place where people feel they can be safe. And it just felt so sad to me that in the one place where people should be informed about this stuff, where they should know how to handle this situation, that they actually let her in that condition walk out onto the street with no cab or money or jacket or anything. And it just kind of it broke me a little bit to see that. So I know it has to have been very, very difficult with for you, but I'm just grateful that you're willing to come on and share your experience, because I think it's something that can help people, help change conversations about this, and help people find better ways to handle these kinds of situations. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for inviting me. And I think you've hit the nail right on the head there. It should be a hospital should be a safe place where we go to get the medical attention that we're seeking. The fact that you're turned out or sort of overlooked, it's a bit disgraceful and it's discouraging. And I wonder really what our healthcare system is truly, really all about, because it doesn't seem to be about helping people.
Yeah. And when you talk to people who are going into healthcare, almost inevitably, they talk about the idea early on, nurses, physician assistants, all sorts of people, about being drawn to the profession to help people. And then when you talk to them years later, they're often very
Cold
jaded.
and callous.
Yeah. Yes. Cold, callous, and jaded.
Yeah.
And I just think about it. The part for me, I think, that just really stuck out. So I've done work in mental health and psychiatric and substance abuse settings, and sort of like one of my other hats, and definitely for a good chunk of my career. And, I had read, I don't know if this is true, and you can tell me if it's not. I had read that there was at least one report that the precipitating event to her leaving, and I know I've heard different versions of this. I heard one version where they said she left against medical advice. Another version where she had thrown applesauce on, or apple juice on a nurse and then was escorted out by security. And I just thought to myself, like, when I worked in outpatient settings, but I would sometimes go with my clients when they were in acute situations to both psychiatric hospitals and just the regular emergency room for intake. And if all they did was throw apple juice at us, I would have been thanking them.
Well, yeah, I mean, to your point, my other daughter is a nurse, as a matter of fact, my daughter Rachel, and she said to me, apple juice is nothing. She said, Mom, I've been stabbed by a fork.
Oh, yeah. All sorts of things. I've seen trays fly across the room. It just seems like an odd response to it. Is that, do you know or feel like you have any idea of what really happened that night after you left?
Well, when we went there first to the hospital, do you mind if I sort of back you up to when we first came to
Absolutely.
the hospital?
Go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
When we first came to the hospital, she was seen by an emergency doctor who said, this is not really my forte, addiction and psychosis or whatever she might be slipping into. He said, but there is an evening doctor coming on, a hospital doctor who is well versed in this, who will come down and see your daughter. But he proceeded to examine Rebecca, and he said to her, can you put your hands up, like open your hands, turn your palms over? She did all these things. Can you close and make a fist? She did. Can you put your hands up in the air? And she did. And he said to me, I don't know, she doesn't seem to be too confused. And then he walked away with her chart. And I went to get him and I said, could you come back and see my daughter for a moment? And he said, yeah, sure. And he came back. Rebecca still had her hands up in the air. And I said, do you maybe want to tell her to put her hands down now?
Yep.
So I said,
Yep.
so you're telling me that she's in mental control of her motor activity, but her hands are still up because you haven't given her the direction to put her hands down. Her brain is not functioning with her motor skills.
And there's
said,
a disconnect.
Yeah. And he said, oh, okay. Yeah, Rebecca, put your hands down. So she put her hands down. Then we waited and waited. And then the hospital doctor came and he said to me, oh, yeah, so what happened? And I said, well, Rebecca started detoxing from home. And now several days later, she was very disorientated and confused and throwing up all night. And during the course of the day, she slept a lot. I gave her Gravol. But she was like very incoherent in the things she was saying to me. And then she came to me and said, here's the pillow you asked me for. And I said, I didn't ask you for a pillow. She's like, yeah, you did. And I'm like, no, I didn't. She's like, can you take it? And I'm like, sure. And then she said, a little bit later, she said, did you ask me for a pillow? And I said, no, I didn't, Rebecca. She said, Mom, I need to go to the hospital. She said, I'm hallucinating.
Yeah, she could tell that she was in that space of,
she did.
Yeah, drifting in and out of reality. I think that's also something people don't entirely understand about psychosis. It's not like
you're nuts. It's you. You sort of slip in and out of sort of like reality and consciousness. So anyway, the doctor said, yeah, she's doing this all the wrong way. Very favorable, Rebecca, that you're doing this. Like, is this your goal? And Rebecca said to him, yes. And he said, okay, you know what? We need to get you at least minimum 3 days here in this hospital. We need to monitor you. We need to get you on proper medication. You just don't cold turkey off of fentanyl. You have to have certain medications to help you control the other things that are happening to your body and to your mind. So I said to him, so are you going to put her into the psychiatric ward? There's a psychiatric ward there. And he said, well, no, it's 10:30 at night. And he said, and I think they're busy. We'll just leave her here in emergency and then we'll deal with it tomorrow.
So
Okay.
this is sort of, even though he doesn't have experience with this is sort of like what you'd call the classic psychosis that comes after opioid withdrawal, disoriented, hallucinating, you're impaired in terms of your motor skills and communication.
Right.
But she knows at this point she needs help. She wants
does.
help.
She knows
You
that she
guys
can't
want her to
do
get
it.
help.
Yeah, and she knew
Yeah.
she couldn't do it on her own. So he ordered a prescription of medication for her. When we first got there, they put an IV in her, and it was a very nice nurse, and she'd come over a couple times to see Rebecca and just make sure she was settled and okay. But I said to the nurse, what would happen if she accidentally or purposely pulls out, because she's not really thinking clearly, if she pulled out her IV? And she said to me, well, she said we would restrain her for her own safety. Well, as it turns out, at 7:00, the shift changed. And before the night doctor saw her around 9:00 in the evening, Rebecca said to me, I have to go to the bathroom. And she just yanked that IV right out of her arm. Blood was gushing everywhere. I couldn't even find her nurse that was in charge of her, the evening nurse. Then she came over. She was quite annoyed at Rebecca that, oh, look at what you've done, kind of thing. Well, she doesn't know what she's done and she doesn't really care. Her mind is, I have to go to the bathroom. That's all she's focusing on. So anyway, that just to tell you a little bit sort of how I feel that the care in the hospital was going. So for one, they didn't restrain her after that. That nurse had a hard time putting in another IV, so they put in an IV on her hand. Yeah. And then never did that nurse come back over until after the hospital doctor had seen her. She brought over her medication, which were 2 pills in a paper cup. And she said, Rebecca, can you take this medication? And Rebecca shook her head no. And she said to me, this is the nurse, said to me, I'll leave this medication with you and see if you can get her to take it.
Wow.
I'm not licensed to give out medication.
Right.
Why the hell is she leaving the medication with me? Anyway, I guess maybe she felt I was her mother and I'd be more successful. But as it turned out, I couldn't either. Rebecca was just like gritting her teeth. She was not having anything to do with it. I kind of tried to crumble it up and give it to her in little bits. I couldn't. So I went back to the nurse and said, I couldn't give her any medication. And she said, well, I guess she'll just have to wait till the next dosage because I'm not sure how much she got and how much she didn't get. And I said, well, I can tell you, she got nothing. She's like, well, she'll have to wait till the next roundabout.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. So now she has been withdrawing and at the hospital since 5:00 without any kind of medication given to her.
And it sounds pretty wild to me in thinking about that because, like I'm just listening to what you're saying. One, you would never ask anyone else to give a patient medication because there's all sorts of wild things, right? Like
What if I
there
took
could be right. Or what if the coding on a medication is meant for slow release and you crush it up and the person immediately gets hit by all of it? Or, like there's an assortment of things. There's a reason why nurses give medication. So that's really crazy. And then the impatience piece of it, because the normal procedure, like if you didn't want to force feed the medication to the patient, you've got plenty of other alternatives. Most of the best ones are just convincing the person to take them, right? Like being patient and taking your time. But you can also look to alternative medications that you can give by intramuscular injection or
Exactly.
or
through the
IV
bag.
Yeah, right. Just plug it into the IV bag. And it may not be the ideal medication, but it may be something to put her to sleep or to treat the psychosis.
Yeah.
So in listening to that story, what I'm just sort of getting the vibe of is just a very impatient healthcare worker.
Right. And not very experienced in that particular field. Okay. I know that they're an emergency room and they deal with everything, but if you're not equipped to deal with this kind of a situation, you need to have the proper facility or the proper people there to deal with it. So as it progressed on, I said to Rebecca, because she hadn't eaten for several days, I said, "Are you hungry? Do you want me to ask them for a sandwich?" And she shook her head. So they brought me half of a tuna sandwich. I cut the half of the tuna sandwich into thirds. Had to say to Rebecca, "Okay, open your mouth." She opened her mouth. I put the part of the sandwich in. I had to say to her, "Okay, close your mouth now." Chew it a bit. Chew it a bit. Like she just was. I just
Swallow.
wanted to
Yeah.
give you an idea of where her mind was. It was drifting. She wasn't really coherent. She was and she wasn't. And um, yeah, I mean, I was just so anyway. She just sort of bit down her mouth and chewed a little bit and opened up her mouth, and most of the sandwich fell out. So
Mm.
this is just letting you know the state that she was in, because I'm going to tell you some things down the road as well. So then she I stroked her hand, and I just talked to her and told her how proud I was of her and how I was there for her. And then she kind of fell asleep. Well, I have to work at 6 a.m. So this is now just after midnight. And this is when I said to the nurse, I have to work in the morning. She's asleep. I think I'm going to go home and then call in to work, and I'll come back in the morning. They were like,
Right.
and she was in an overflow bed, which is around the corner. So she wasn't really even very visible to the nursing station.
Mm.
So, I mean, a person in this sort of state of mind. And while I was sitting there with her, there was a very elderly gentleman in a dolly beside her, and he kept saying, "I want to go home. I want to go home." And they were saying, "No, we can't let you go home. There's nobody there. You don't have a ride. We can't let you go." Okay. So he was maybe in
Yeah.
his 80s. Okay. So then now switching back to my daughter. So she's asleep. I left. Okay, I got home. I guess it was about 20 to 1, climbed into bed. Then I got this call from the hospital about 25 after 1. "Hi, I'm just calling as a courtesy call to let you know Rebecca's left the hospital." I'm like,
Hmm.
"What?" They're like, "She's left the hospital." And I'm like, "Why?" She said she didn't want to stay. She woke up. She said she was thirsty. She pulled out her IV. She was walking around. She pulled out a second IV. She's walking around asking for a drink. Apparently, then a nurse told her to go back to her bed, brought her juice, and she threw the juice at her.
Mm.
Okay. Then from there, I don't know what happened. Okay. That's as far as I got for that. So,
That's a interesting comparison, right?
mhm,
You know, she walked out of the hospital, but sitting right, I guess, down the hall from her was somebody who was asking to leave
and they were
the
refusing.
hospital and they were refusing. So,
Right. So when I left Rebecca, she was in a hospital gown top. She still had her sweatpants on. She didn't have her shoes and her socks on. Apparently, one of the nurses said she left, and somebody went after her to say, "Oh, here's your bag with your clothes." So,
hmm.
wait, were they letting her walk out of the hospital without shoes on? Because her shoes were in the bag and her sweatshirt was in the bag. Did somebody have to help her put those clothes on, or was she able to? I don't know. I don't really know that. So after we hung up, I got up out of bed and I went to the hospital thinking, well, maybe she's just waiting outside the hospital
In the
door.
parking
Yeah.
lot or, yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
she wasn't there. I drove around all night, up every side street, up and down looking for her. Then I even came back to the house because her boyfriend was at our house, and I said to him, "Get up. I need some extra eyes to help look. Maybe it's dark and I'm tired. Can you help me look?" So we drove all over, everywhere, could not find her. 7 o'clock in the morning, I phoned the RCMP and reported my daughter is missing. And they were like, "Well, it's only like 5.5 hours." And I was like, My daughter was at the hospital. She was confused. She was sick. She hasn't eaten now for 3 days. She's weak. She's in withdrawal. She's had no medication. And they were like, well, maybe she's gone to somebody's place to use. Well, there's only one person that I know that's very close to the hospital that she could have walked there by foot. And that was the very first place that I went when I couldn't find her at the hospital. I thought, okay, she's gone to this trailer park where she knows somebody's there. And they said no. And they right away got a few people out on bicycles. This is now 2:30 in the morning on bicycles driving around looking for her as well.
Oh, wow.
So, as it turns out, then I called my daughter, Rachel, who wasn't living with me at the time. She came, we went to the hospital. It was just after 8 in the morning, and we spoke with the manager, and her response was, well, I just came on in the day shift. I don't really fully know what happened at night, but I know that your daughter didn't want to stay and she wanted to leave. Okay, we later that day learned that she was escorted off of the hospital grounds. So wait a second. If you want to leave, why are you escorted by security?
Yeah, it sounds like the kind of thing where I wouldn't need an escort if I wanted to go.
Right. Then my daughter, who's a nurse, said, did she sign a release form from the hospital? No. We didn't really have time to do that because she was anxious to leave. Well, if you're anxious to leave, why is security? And why is somebody chasing her with her clothes? Like, okay, so it's now 1:20 in the morning. It's -3 Celsius degrees. She came in an ambulance. The ambulance driver said, don't send her coat. She doesn't need a coat because the ambulance is warm. Don't send her cell phone or money because that stuff gets stolen in emergency. So my daughter went to the emergency hospital with no coat, no phone, no money, no identification because the paramedics here took all of that from her. They asked her for her ID and her medical card, and I gave all that to them. So she went to the hospital with all that pre-registered. So yeah, no coat, no phone, no money, no ID. That's how my daughter left at 1:30 in the morning or 1:25 in the morning. So my other daughter said, well, if she didn't sign a consent form, why didn't you have the doctor certify her so that she had to stay? Because
usually isn't the process normally that if you want to leave against medical advice, you sign a form that says, hey, I have been told X, Y, or Z, and I should stay here, but I've made the decision not to, and you sign it. And then the alternative is under mental health laws for most of North America, I would say.
They can continue for 3 days.
Right. Yeah. 72-hour hold, 48-hour hold, depending on where you are, but you can be held. And certainly that, she's the classic patient that would be held, disoriented, psychotic symptoms, in withdrawal.
Right. So the answer they gave, so my daughter said, well, why didn't you get the doctor to certify her so that she would have no choice but to stay? Oh, well, it wasn't the emergency doctor that decided to admit her to the hospital. It was the hospital physician, and he was asleep. And we really didn't have time to get him up and get him down here in time. Hello?
Yeah. So it's really interesting because I can think of one time where a patient I knew bolted the emergency room, straight up bolted, left the emergency room, and they called the police.
Yeah.
And brought the patient back.
Yeah.
Put him on a temporary detention order. And so is it fair to say, just in listening to what you're saying and going back, that you haven't been given a straight answer about what happened that night, or you've been given conflicting answers?
None at all. And then the daytime nurse said, well, if we really want to find out what happened, it's in her records, and her records have already been submitted down the hall to records. So you can go down there and you can get the records. So my daughter and I went down to records and said, my daughter, Rebecca Harbowy, was here last night, and we just want her records so we can find out what happened to lead to her having left the hospital. Oh, that's confidential. Unless she signs a form, we won't release them. I'm like, well, she can't sign the form because she's missing. She's listed as a missing person. So, and then my daughter said to me, you know what, Mom, shift changes at 7:00. How is it by 20 after 8? Those records are already down there filed.
Yeah, I was about to say that seems pretty fast.
Because that's what
because it probably should have still been on the chart in the room. Were the Royal Canadian Mounted Police ever able to get a clearer picture, whether they've been able to share it with you or not, of what happened?
They are the ones later that day that said to me, oh, did you know that Rebecca was escorted off the hospital grounds? Which is not what I was understanding the night before. My impression from the phone call from the hospital was your daughter wanted to leave and we let her leave because we couldn't hold her. She's an adult. But if you want to leave, you're not escorted. Nobody told us she was escorted off of the property. Then, please don't think that I'm, prejudiced or anything. But then we spoke to the security guard, and they're East Indian, and he said, oh, yeah, she went this way. The other one said, no, she went that way. Okay, well, if you escorted her off the property, don't you know which direction she went? As it turned out, we then talked to the security guard that escorted her off the property, and he did say that she went south on Laity Road. So I never even looked that way. I never dawned. If you saw this street going south from the hospital, it is a very steep decline. It's very narrow. It's a very, very dark road, not a lot of street lighting. My daughter was a bit of a coward. Never in my life would I have thought she would walk that way towards home when she could go north 2 blocks up and she's on a main throughway that's lit up. There's 7-Eleven, maybe.
Right.
That's where I was looking for her, thinking, okay, she's heading home. So, she'll head up there. And the trailer park is up that way. So that's why I stopped at the trailer park. She wasn't there. And then I thought, okay, I went up and down every side street. For 4 hours, I was driving around looking for my daughter up and down every side street. And had the hospital have said to me, your daughter was escorted off the property by a security guard and she headed south on Laity, I would have gone down Laity and picked her up right away. Because the very next day, after speaking with the manager who actually gave us no information, my daughter's husband, Michael, and myself and Rachel, we canvassed that whole area knocking on doors. And it was us that found the footage from someone's home of her walking in the middle of the road with her arms across her chest there.
Cold.
Yeah. And then it was later picked up. And now this is about maybe a week, maybe more later. I had a search party, just friends and people come. We printed off flyers. We put them up on every telephone post. I canvassed every house that had a camera. And this little shop had some video footage of her walking. Now, this is maybe a mile from where the last footage was. And it's her, again, walking in the middle of the road.
Okay. Right, yes.
And then several miles further up the road, someone almost hit her because she was walking in the middle of the road. And because it had been very warm that day, and that was our very first cold night, it was super foggy, just like pea soup. So someone almost hit my daughter. Did they phone 911 and say hey, there's some nut?
There's a lady walking in the middle of the road.
Yeah, I almost hit her. You might want to come and see what her story is before she gets hit by a car. Because someone wouldn't know who she is or what she is, right?
Mm-hmm. Did they ever, how
No.
did they find that person?
How did they find that person?
Yeah.
All right, I can tell you. When my daughter Rachel got married, one of her bridesmaids, and I won't say her name, her father was talking to his wife saying, "Oh, I almost hit a girl the other day walking in the middle of the road."
Oh, wow.
And, I mean, how ironic is this? And my
Wow.
daughter's friend said, "What? That's my friend's sister that's missing." And then they called us right away, and we called the police, and the police went and took a statement from him. But no, he didn't think anything about calling 911 or the police. I mean, you know, okay, you can't call the police about everything, but now we're talking 3 o'clock in the morning, walking down the middle of Lougheed Highway, which is the main throughway, on a very, very foggy night. And guess what? If you didn't hit her, there's a good chance that someone else might have hit her.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I can think of this situation that happened to me recently. Was it last year or the year before? But I was driving from my parents' house in this neighborhood, and there was this, it's a local street that goes out to a little bit bigger street. It's got 2 lanes on both sides. And I'm pulling out, and there's a lady dancing in the street. Instantly, I'm like, she's not okay. Um, and then and then eventually she like lays down and just sits down in the street. So
Yeah,
I had to,
yeah,
yeah, similar. I had to get somewhere. However, I thought the same thing to do would be, because when I tried to talk to her, she ran over to the other side of the street. So I was like, I'm going to take my car and I'm going to block both lanes of the street so no one comes flying, God forbid, flying down here and hits her, and it, seriously injures her and ruins them.
yeah.
And called 911. And I stayed, and the police arrived, and they had to chase her. But they eventually got her, and I just think it's the human thing to do, because nothing on the end of whatever busy thing I had to do, short of if I were stopping a nuclear war, perhaps, um, is more important than helping keep someone safe.
I agree. And the thing is, not only would you have hit and maybe killed my daughter, how would you feel living with yourself if you hit and killed somebody?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, and I had in the moment I'm talking about, I had both thoughts. I was worried about the person who was standing in the street, and I was worried about somebody else coming by and not noticing her and hitting her.
Yeah,
Um,
of course.
if the light had been green. And so is that the last video of her is walking on River Road, which my understanding is that River Road has a train station on it, railroad tracks, and then the river itself, but
Right.
it dead ends, right? Does it dead end,
It
or
doesn't. It comes out onto what's called the Haney Bypass, which is
nah?
a bypass road that goes onto the Lougheed Highway. And that business that I canvassed that had the footage, she was walking on the Haney Bypass towards
Okay.
Lougheed Mall, or not Lougheed Mall, Lougheed Highway. And Lougheed Highway, okay, we don't have a 100% that this was Rebecca that he almost hit, but
Mhm.
he described her. She was in the middle of the road. The time framing is right. And it's the direction where she was heading. Why was she heading now at this point, she's already past any cutoffs towards our place. So is she just aimlessly walking because she's
Wandering.
not really knowing what she's doing? But, I just, so right away, people started posting it on Facebook. And that night, I got a call from someone, and they said, "Hey, yeah, I had passed somebody coming up onto the Haney Bypass who was walking, who fits her description." And I was like, okay, thank you so much. Okay, so they saw her 2:00 in the morning. I then called the police. So now it's 8:00 at night. So the whole day has gone by because we've been knocking on doors and stuff. It's been on Facebook. But I got this message. I called the police and I said, someone did say that they saw her because the police were doing search and rescue around the hospital area.
Mm.
So they did, I believe, 2 or 3 search and rescues all around the bush area around the hospital because there is quite a bit of bush there. But she wasn't even there. Like if they had been canvassing like we had been canvassing, a policeman knocking on your door, you might be a little bit more receptive to give out information or say, yeah, let me check my video cam or something.
Mm-hmm.
But she wasn't even there. They were looking in the wrong area. But we didn't get that video cam for probably a week after. However, I did get that tip from Facebook that the fella said he'd seen her around 2:00 come up from River Road onto the Haney bypass. So I called the police. So this now should be giving the police an idea of where she was. So instead of doing search and rescue by the hospital, which was a good 1.5 miles away, how about doing search and rescue close to where she was, right?
Right.
Anyway, this is what the policeman said to me. Yeah, there's a homeless camp down there by the railway tracks. There's lots of homeless people walking around at that time of night coming back from wherever. And I said, well, yeah, okay, maybe, but somebody identified her with her clothing because we posted it on Facebook and he said, yeah, she was wearing that clothing. And the policeman said, well, we'll go back around 2:00 in the morning and check it out.
Why
So
2:00 in the morning?
I guess to see if they see somebody who resembles my daughter walking back and forth, and then they can say, no, it wasn't your daughter. It's this particular type of, it's this person, this homeless person.
Oh.
But right away they fluffed it off. Well, yeah, there's a lot of homeless people that walk around that route because there's a homeless camp down there. Like,
was there a point for you where you felt like the RMCP started to take it more seriously? Because I'm getting the feeling that they're not thinking that they really have a missing person, that she's going to turn up somewhere.
That's right. Because so then, I mean, I was very adamant about it and it was all over Facebook. And right away we spread the word. And Maple Ridge, not a super big community. A lot of people then started looking for her. And I think then when I got the footage about a week later, then the RCMP, this is now, I'm going to say 3 weeks after her missing, put out an alert for people to check their car cams. Well, nobody has car cam footage 3 weeks later. Most of it erases after a week or 30 days.
Fairly quickly.
And I think what they thought is just another druggie missing. You know what? She's gone into recluse. She's maybe doing some drugs. She'll show up in a day or two. That is the feeling that I got from the RCMP. And it wasn't until we got footage of her walking in the middle of the streets and until Corporal Westroff, who is from Homicide Missing Person, took over the case, that I really felt that they now believed that they had a real missing person, not just a druggie who's like, she's found some place to do drugs for a couple of days and she'll show back up. Because you know what? I hate to say it, but that is what happens with a lot of people that are substance abusers. They go missing for a few days and then they surface.
Mm-hmm. Yep, reemerge. Well, and I think, I have a friend who studies disappearances and missing persons cases. And one of the things he said to me is that most local law enforcement, you could spend your entire career and never be involved in a missing persons case. So they often don't know the signs to look for and instead use heuristics, right? Like, this person's a drug addict, so I've seen this drug addict story. But that if they really had a broader understanding of what happens in disappearances, there would have been some red flags in a case like this from the get-go about the way that it was handled and the state that she was in. But also, part of me wonders whether it's right when people hear the words drug addict, or they hear the words, related to a psychiatric condition like psychosis, they sort of
They
tune out.
They
Yeah.
frown down on those people. Oh, you know what? Those people bring it on themselves. They have choice. Well, you know what? I can tell you that I'm almost 70 years old. I'm not fat, but I'm overweight. I've been dieting my whole life. My whole life I've been saying I'm going to get skinny. It's not an easy thing to do. If you've been doing substance abuse for years and years, half a dozen years, not easy to say, okay, I'm quitting today. It just,
Oh, no. I mean, I've never met an addict who has been active a couple of months who still really wants to be an addict. Like they might play it off. They might say they're having fun, but at the end of the day, like most addicts are quite miserable at being addicts. And I have yet to meet a single person who wanted to be psychotic. Like
exactly.
grand total of 0 there. And I've come across a lot of them. And I think some of it is exactly what you're saying. We're not thinking about it. And I think Rachel, your daughter, kind of captured it perfectly when she said something along the lines of, your Rebecca didn't go into the hospital homeless. She was brought by people who loved her and who cared about her. And she came out of the hospital not cared for and homeless.
Yeah, alone. And that's
Yeah.
not how it was supposed to be. She wasn't trying to do it alone. There's a stigma. People think, ooh, they do drugs. Oof. What's the matter with them? Well, yeah, what is the matter with them? Our healthcare needs to find out. You know what? Because everybody who's got any type of addiction has an addiction for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And once that addiction clings on to you, it's very hard to shake it. And even if you want to shake it, it takes a lot. And it takes professional people to help. My daughter soon discovered that. A couple days at home, and she knew, I can't do this. I need help. I need to go to people who are supposed to be able to help me.
Yeah. And those are the people who it sounds like failed her.
They did fail her. And so I did not like any of the answers that I wasn't getting. And I had an investigation done by Fraser Health into the procedure. And
Fraser Health, they are the company that oversees Ridge Meadows
that's
Hospital?
right. Yeah,
Okay.
Fraser Health does all the lower mainland. And they basically did an investigation and got back to me and said, well, we've completed our investigation. And I said, and? They said, well, unfortunately, we can't really tell you anything because it's confidential and it's personal. Confidential to who? If the person isn't around, okay, now we're talking 8 months later. Anyway, this is what he did say.
Did they end up? Oh, I'm sorry.
This is what he did say to me. I can tell you that the reason that they let her leave the hospital is they felt that she was competent enough to leave. I said to him, you know what? That's, excuse me, a bunch of BS. Because you tell me, Jason, what competent person leaves at 1:30 in the morning in -3 degrees with no money, no cell phone, no
bag,
no way home, who's a nervous wreck, who hasn't eaten for 3 days, suffering from hallucinations. And my daughter was a scaredy cat. She would always say to me, Mom, it's 10 o'clock at night. The front door's not locked. And I'm like, yeah, I know. She's like, Mom, you should lock the door. Always make sure the doors are all locked at night. Mom, do this. Mom, she never trusted a soul. My thinking is now that night that she left, and I don't know what led to it. But I said to the hospital person who gave me this review, if you think that that's competent, I'd like to hear your version of competency, because to me, that sounds completely like somebody incompetent.
How did they square that with what they had told the police on the first night?
Well, they told the
And
police.
security guards, what the security guards said.
They told the police that a security guard escorted her off the property. That's it. That's all that they disclosed to me. And I was like, well, why? Why would it take a security guard if she wanted to leave so badly? Why was she escorted off the property? And why wasn't I told that she was escorted off the property? And why wasn't a doctor called to make her incompetent? Or why wasn't somebody saying to her, okay, if you really want to leave, Rebecca, yes, you're free to leave, but wait here, because you know what? Your mom came with you to the hospital in the ambulance. I'm sure your mom.
Let's see if she can pick her up. Yeah.
Or you know what? If you don't want to disturb your mom, we're going to call you a cab. I'm a $10 car ride from the hospital.
I think we're going to stop here for today, and we'll be back with part 2 in a few days. In the meantime, if you'd like to join us for more discussions with me and other listeners, we can be found on most social media platforms, including a listener-run Facebook group called the Silver Linings Fireside Chat. For deeper conversations with our guests and live conversations with other listeners, you can also join us on our Patreon at www.patreon.com/The Silver Linings Handbook. I'm Jason Blair, and this is the Silver Linings Handbook podcast. We'll see you all again in a few days.